All right. Ian Trottier here, Discussions of Truth, Wednesday. Coming in at the 4 o'clock hour, we've got JP Linstroth standing by for a discussion regarding the BLM movement, Black Lives Matters. We've also got Brian Knowles, who'll be joining us now for the third time, I believe. And see if we've got Brandon as well. Standing by to join us, Brandon Gilbert. Brandon, if you'll be joining us, will along with Brian be joining us from the Palm Beach County School District. And again, the topic of discussion will be Black Lives Matter, and we'll discuss and vet various affairs. This is a movement that's stretched globally, really, as statues were taken down in Europe and around the world, but most pertinent, of course, to societal structures within the United States. So that discussion coming up shortly here. Topic today, we have really unprecedented times here, folks. Coming up here in October, the final 45-day stretch. We're about 45 days out now. 45-day stretch to the election, 22 election, November 3rd. It's a date that I have. We've got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris representing the Democrat Party, and the incumbent Donald Trump with Mike Pence representing the Republican Party. Yeah, folks, really, why is it that a party system is even needed in the United States? I look at individuals and candidates and their philosophies and their morals and their convictions and their views, again, as individual people. The party system groups like-minded people. I understand that, but there are what I don't like. What I personally do not like are the folks that say, oh, hey, I'm a Democrat, so I'm voting for anybody that's running in the Democrat office. Well, all you're doing is feeding that machine, and that machine may not best represent the Constitution. Same thing for a Republican. Oh, I'm a Republican, so regardless of the county or the city or the state, I'm voting Republican across the board. Well, each and every one of those candidates best represent you, and again, the American Constitution. That's really the question here. So, anyway, the vaccine issue is a whole other issue. The mask issue is a whole other issue. The Black Lives Matter movement, of course, coming to proliferance, if you will, because of another shooting. This was Minneapolis, George Floyd, of a black man, a death of a black man at the hand of a white officer. But there were. So it's a question of how do we, as a society, best deal with racism. I mean, it blows me away. 2020, that racism, that white people or black people or Asian people somehow elevate themselves above others just based off of the color of their skin. I mean, come on, is there anything more barbaric? Could you have another barbaric interpretation of differences in humanity right? I mean, so does that mean that somebody has green eyes is a better human being than somebody that has brown eyes or blue eyes, or somebody that has different hair color versus? I mean, this is, again, I'm going to use that word barbaric because it's absolutely insane, the types of discrepancies and prejudices that we place on one another based off of physical appearance. I mean, hello, Thurgood Marshall. Hello, Clarence Thomas. Yeah, these are fine legal minds that just so happen to represent the African American community. But why is it that we have to look at these people as being African American? You know, why is it that in 2020 in America we just can't see everybody as being an American? Again, and that kind of coincides with my argument over the party lines. You know, people voting across the board Democrat or across the board Republican. You know, why not look at the individual for who they are, and how they might best represent you and your family and keep you safe and keep your rights upheld, regardless of what party they represent. All right, so trying to coordinate a Zoom meeting here with JP, and let's see if we get this going now. And if I open that might, if I open the meeting, that might enable them to join. Let's see here. Okay, let's see if JP's in here. No. All right, it's just working. Bear with me. Okay. Let's see if this lets JP in. JP, are you in there? Are you there? There you are. JP, how are you, bud?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. It's been a while. I think it's been since August, and I know we were working on getting this. Well, it's been about a month. Okay, and then I've got somebody else here joining. I wasn't aware that there was a password required. Is this?
Yeah, I thought there was, but then I don't know. Like, I guess I tried it on my own with Zoom, and then it kind of worked just the way it was. So I'm not really sure what happened.
Okay. Well, at least the ID. Is Brian? Is that you?
That's me, brother.
Brian, great to have you back on the program. Good to hear your voice. Do either one of you know if Brandon will be joining us?
He told me today he would. So I got an email from him that he would. Now, I did not check my school email again if he sent me another email, but he said that he would be here at 4:15.
Okay.
Not sure. You sent him the sign and stuff, right? You did.
Yeah. Yeah, he was copied on that email. So that's fine. We can go ahead and begin without him, and if he joins in the conversation, that's great.
Okay.
So, Brian, this is the third time you've joined Discussions of Truth, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we thank you for joining. And JP, as always, you are a stalwart. And you know, I've had the program. JP, you've been with me for a while, and you know,
since the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, we're coming up on 3, and the program's just about completed its 4th year. So, you know, we've had. Well, Cynthia McKinney, I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know who that is, Brian. She's a former guest on the program. Even Tarana Burke, who really started the Me Too movement. She's a former member.
I really appreciate you being invited back. Yeah.
Go ahead, JP. I didn't get that. Oh, okay. There's Derek. Okay, can you hear me okay? JP? All right, I'm just working on some.
Okay, having some problem audio.
Okay, I can hear you,
Some problem
JP.
with the audio here. I don't know if any of you are having some audio difficulty.
Yeah, I'm having. Yeah, it sounds real bad. Yeah.
Sounds real bad, huh?
Sounds bad, Ian.
Yep.
I wonder if we should hang up and begin again.
Yeah, you want to do that?
You're like
Okay. All right, we're gonna end this. We're gonna end this Zoom, folks. We're gonna end this Zoom. We're gonna try this a different way. I'm gonna call.
okay.
All right. Let's see here. You can still hear me, JP. So I'm going in and out. Okay. Let's do this. Let's call in JP right now. Let's see if this works.
Oh.
All right, let's give this a try, JP.
Okay.
Do you have Brian and let's see if I've got their numbers. I can just bring them in right here. All right, let's see.
Brian's there on Zoom.
Brian's still on Zoom?
I think so.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Oh, so you can hear. Is that? I think that's coming through from your. Derek, can you hear us?
So I don't hear like my voice on Zoom, but I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if
me.
you want to.
Brian, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, so we're just having an issue with Derek. And JP, do you happen to have Derek's number? I'm looking for it right now. I don't know that I have it.
I can.
Can you thread him in on your line?
I don't. My phone doesn't want to.
It doesn't do that. Would you text me his number if you find it?
I will look at it. I'm looking at for it right now. I don't know if I have his office number, if I have his number, but I'll look.
Let's see. Okay. So he's not hearing us properly. Let's see.
Okay.
I'm gonna send him also an email right now. And just see if he'll call me.
I don't see his number on his email, so he might need to email you or call you. You want me to send him an email to call you or something?
Yeah. All right. So I've just sent in one as well. Okay.
Okay. Now from your end, like, are we all able to talk? And because I don't hear.
Can you hear Brian?
I don't hear Brian like on my phone.
I'm here. I'm here.
You don't hear that,
He's
JP?
on Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, but you don't.
My phone.
Oh, you're not hearing him on the phone.
But if I hung, maybe should I hang up from Zoom?
Yeah. Why don't you do that? And then I think if you hang up on Zoom, you're gonna. Let's see. Brian, I'm gonna give you my number. See if you get you just thread into my line instead of the Zoom. So I'm gonna send you an email right now, Brian. So I'll see if I can get both. So Brian, I just sent you an email. If you get that email, just hang up on Zoom and call me through this line. Because I think if you hang up, JP, if you hang up on Brian, it's gonna cut him out. Because I also left Zoom.
Okay, so I just hung up on Zoom.
Okay. All right. So we just hung up on Brian, and I don't know if he got.
I've tried. Okay, so all right. So Brandon, I have. Are we on air? Or do you want me? Can you give me your? I can get your phone number and give it to him. I guess. Let's see.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to mention it. So I just emailed.
All right. So let me just give him your number from information that I have. Okay. Okay. Here is.
Okay.
So I'm emailing Brandon now. Okay. Do you have Brian's phone number?
Yeah, you know what? I think I do. I think it's in his. Yeah, let me call him right now. So you'll be put on hold here, JP. Let me give him a call.
I just put, okay, no problem. I just sent Brandon to email your number. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And thank you again for the show.
Oh, let's see here. Yeah, let's see if this works. Okay. All right, so simply trying to thread the 4 lines into one. Zoom didn't work, so we're giving a alternative approach here. Okay, and this isn't ringing. There we go. See if that works. Yeah, this is Discussion of Truth, Ian Trottier. Here we go. All right, let's see. Yeah, is this... Okay, who have I got here?
This is Derrick Gilbert.
Yes, okay, Derek, great. So I've got you. Let's merge the call here. Okay, JP, are you there? Okay. Derek, thanks for joining, man.
You got it.
Let me try to get JP back in here. We had some issues with Zoom, so.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So I'm glad you said that. Okay.
All right, so let's see JP.
Hello.
Okay, JP. All right, so.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. So, Derek, you're there. We've got JP, so now we're just trying to work on getting Brian in here. Correct?
Right.
JP, you hear that?
Not on. So yeah, I heard that. I was just trying to send Brian your phone number.
Yep.
And I'm doing that right now so that just in case.
There he is. Okay. Brian, got you, buddy.
Yes.
Okay, so emerging calls now.
Okay, so I sent Brian your phone number.
Okay, so I think we're all on board now, JP, Brian, and Derek. So Brian, this is just for the layout for listeners. Again, Brian Knowles is a manager of African American Studies, Latino, Holistic, and Gender Studies at the Palm Beach County School District. Now, this is your first time joining us, Derek. JP, of course, former Fulbright Scholar to Brazil, Oxford PhD. Derek, for listeners, please give a quick introduction about who you are and what you do. You're also affiliated with Palm Beach County School District. Is that correct?
Yep, I've been a teacher here for about 15 or so years, and I'm really just a humble servant. I teach reading English, and I started there.
Yeah.
And I've had the opportunity for the last few years to get into some really meaningful work concerning social justice, and we've had an opportunity to create a COP, Community of Practice at World Palm Beach High School, named BLX, and it's an organization focused on making sure Black and brown boys have the equitable opportunity to succeed. Giving them a leg up, so it's going well.
Yeah, very good, very good. Now, Brian, you you were traveling, I think, between one of those. JP, you were able to bring on some other outside guests, and we've had some great discussions. But really, to pick up from where we left off, we saw this movement start in Minneapolis with George Floyd, and it's when we first started discussing this topic, it was we had some definitely some violent protests, some rioting, some looting, but it seems like we weren't sure then where this was going to go, but it hasn't slowed down at all, and I think that answers. That answers kind of one of those initial questions that all of us kind of had, 3 months ago, that it has not slowed down, and it's bringing some much needed insight and light, if you will, to which really I find to be a disgusting issue that continues to conflict and divide this country. I mean, I look at 2020 and I look at how great, wonderful things we've done. Whether it be Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, whoever it may be. That's representing the African American community, but we look at the contributions that have been made, and it really appalls me that racism and that any ethnicity, regardless of skin color, regardless of language, regardless of background, that any ethnicity elevates themselves above another. Based off of period, that they elevate themselves off of anything another human being, because all human beings are equal in my view. But for the most part, and that's debatable. But what's appalling is that based off of physical attributions, people elevate themselves above others, and that we are continuing to be plagued by this in our society. So we've gotten a little bit from Brian. Tell us a little bit more, Derek, about how you're going about as a teacher, how you're going about affecting. Tell us a bit more about these programs that you've started. COX, I think you called it.
Yeah, BLX, and I'm glad you brought up and kind of laid a framework of how appalling situations are. And I want to take a step further, because we realize that in this America that we live in, there are some racial and judicial inconsistencies. And so we've known that for quite some time. What I'm trying to do on the home front where I am is recognize the inconsistencies, but then empower the students to not only recognize them, but to put their best foot forward to do something about it through, courageous conversations about race. And that is going to allow students of color in the school district to be able to recognize and then approach this recognition and this inconsistency with a palatable, I want to say, strength to be able to have the conversation and stay centered, and not to become too emotional to lash out, but to have that strong center to be able to stand, I would say, in the paint with educators, teachers, and students to affect change. One of the things that I try to do is have conversations in the classroom, and we do role plays and modeling to see how much our students can stand in this conversation without becoming overwrought with emotion, because that's exactly what this millennial group here. These guys are a different breed, and they don't really take too well when you start to discredit them or marginalize them. They don't really like it too much, and they'll say something to you. I mean, it's a different day and age.
Right.
And I'm okay with that grit. I'm okay with that bite, but I definitely want to prepare the guys to be able to have that conversation with strength that's able to stand and have the conversation and do something about it, and stand in front of people where those people may not understand them, but they can still reach to them, so there can be this mutualistic understanding of where where we all are. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing here is that a support system, and unfortunately that's where we as a society, and whether it's through a government organization, we need to step up to the plate and say, hey, if these children, school age young adults, whatever it may be, aren't getting that support in their home life, then as teachers, right? As a teacher, then you're stepping up and saying, hey, well, we need to build that support for them so that they receive it in the classroom. Is that a statement that I make that you concur with there, Derek?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know what? When we take a look at how the world is, my approach is the school district and the classroom is the microcosmic representation of this
Yeah.
macrocosmic world. So what's happening in the world is definitely happening in our school district. It's definitely happening on our campus. Furthermore, it's definitely happening in our classroom. So we can't turn a blind eye to it, nor can we ignore it. We're going to have to address this. We have to turn and address this and face that mirror of how this world really is. And then prepare our students to face that, because I can't sleep at night knowing that I'm gonna talk about Shakespeare. I'm gonna help my students read, but I'm not preparing them for the real battle, which is gonna happen on the outside of the classroom, but it's also happening now. But I gotta be able to prepare my kids to be able to stand 10 toes down and address the world. So the approach is preparing students to face the world through reading. Got you. I could do that. But also courageous conversations about ways to be able to address this world with a formidable understanding of how this world really is. And it has to happen on the home front. And this is possibly the school district and the classroom is really a lot of the only home front that a lot of students have.
Yeah. Then Brian, some comments on that. What are your thoughts from that?
I'm sorry.
Some comments on that.
Sure, and obviously bring Brian in. And again, I just want to thank you for putting this program together and actually having this discussion again and inviting me back on as a regular guest. And I really appreciate Brian and Brandon joining. Just wanted to bring up kind of, our last guest we had, Dr. Hamdessa Tuso, who's from Ethiopia, and he's a very good friend of mine, who's from the Oromo people in Ethiopia, and who has lived in political exile most of his life. And I think the legacy of colonialism, in addition to, what Brandon's doing is the everyday important work with kids to get them in a place of understanding and to deal with this very real aspect of racism. But if you look at the legacy of colonialism, whether in relation to the British or the French or the Spanish, and how these structures, structural violence is set up, and the legacy of colonialism, I think it's important to understand that really very, very recently that you had writers like Franz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, who wrote about the African colonial liberation movement, and really in the 1960s, obviously with the civil rights movement in the United States, Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and many other luminaries overcoming structural racism in the U.S. But what we find today is that in many ways we're still fighting the civil war that the U.S. had back in the 19th century, in the 1860s. Sure. And so what I kind of wanted to make a bridge of our last discussion from the last program was that, unfortunately, we're, as a society, just in the United States, but as a society, we're dealing with this issue of racism. But if you just compare another country like Brazil, where I've done research, the African people of African descent there have not had a civil rights movement, and as far as African people of African descent there, getting a job is almost impossible if you're of African descent there. And what I try to do with my students is tell them why race, why racism is a construct. It's a social construct. It's totally created, and understanding the difference between phenotypes, physical characteristics, and genotypes, and really understanding they're all part of the same human species, right? Something you brought up at the beginning of the program. That's what I would say.
Yeah, Brian, can you hear us? What are some of your comments here, Brian?
I'm trying my best here, and I hope I can answer this as adequately as possible. I'm having some connectivity issues. It's hard to hear you again, actually. But I just want to kind of chime in for a few things, from both of the guys. And thank you again for having me here. And thank you also. I'm just privileged to to even be here in the same conversation with my boy Brandon and also John. So just definitely just want to be humbled that I'm here.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah. No, you the man. But anyway, just definitely one of the key things that Brandon said as far as addressing some of the things that we're dealing with in a society is developing our leadership within our students and within our kids, especially our students of color, and allowing them to identify the power that they have that's already innately in them, and just kind of activating that power and allowing the kids to find ways to activate that power to become their own change agents. When you talk about, how we impel change and how we create change in society, history shows us is that it's the youth
Right.
that does that. It's the youth that does that. You look back at the civil rights movement, for example, and I picked the civil rights movement among the many movements that kind of occurred throughout American history. I'm not going to say Black history because Black history is American history. Those were young people that did that. You think about when Dr. King kind of catapulted into the fame that he, to the person that he became. He was 26 years old when that happened. You talk about the student sit-ins in Greensboro, etc. Those are all teenagers. Those are all early 20s. So it's that youth and it's the energy that they have that creates that change. And sometimes our kids are so subjected to just the indoctrination that they don't feel like they have power. That their natural role is to acquiesce to the systems and everything that is around them without understanding that they don't have to acquiesce. They can push back and become those change agents. So that's extremely important. And just also some of the things that John mentioned as well. When we're talking about still dealing with the same issues going back from the colonial era and just, from early independence.
Yeah.
Not here just in America, but we're talking about internationally, of just the same recurring nightmare of the things that we're dealing with. Right now, we're kind of reliving, eras from the 20th century to a lot of extent. We're looking at Woodrow Wilson presidency, due to, through
Right.
the political climate of just being kind of set back. We're looking at, kind of this summer kind of felt like Red Summer 1919 to an extent. The late 60s to an extent, the 66 and 67. It just kind of shows you as much progress that we've made in America is how much progress that we still have to make. So,
Right.
It's not scary, but it's just disgusting, that we're still dealing with it. And it's just disgusting that our the powers that be, without saying anything specifically, just seems to not to be pushed back on it, but it seems like it's endorsed by the powers that be.
Yeah. So there's been some impulsive acts, if you will, or acts for solution. I think I'm using that word impulsive. That's my personal choice to use here. But what we're looking at, across the country here on various different climates, a movement to defund police departments. Derek, and I'm using, and I noticed JP, you're using Brandon. So for listeners, JP and Derek are the same person. We're using those names interchangeably to address this person. I'll address you as Derek. Derek. How do you? What's your stance on? Certainly, there needs to be systematic change in some of these police departments.
Your connection's really breaking up. I can't even hear what you just said or comment. I don't know if Derek can or Brian.
No.
But
No,
I'm
we
sorry.
can't interpret any of that. No.
Didn't hear.
Oh, you didn't hear? Can you hear this?
No.
Oh boy.
It's pretty bad.
Oh boy.
No, it's real bad, man.
Let's see here.
I interrupt you, and I couldn't hear anything. I don't think Brian or Brandon could either. But
Yeah, no, that's fine. This isn't any better.
It's getting
a
better.
little bit.
It's getting there.
Oh boy. How about now?
Worse.
Worse. Yikes. Okay. Yeah, it's my location and where I'm at. So, boy, can you hear this? Okay, it's distorted. Huh? It's all distorted. Let's see. Let me see if I can do this. Maybe this will help. Let's shut this down. Just tell me if it's any better. And tell me if this is any better.
I think he's asking. Yeah, it's attempting to, but
it's not there.
Lag or something.
Let's see. Is that any better, guys?
No, it's gotten worse again.
It's gotten worse again. Okay, so.
I don't know. Are you connecting with us with? I don't even know what the technology you have, but with the phone. But I'm not.
Yeah, no, it's a cell phone that I'm using.
Clearly, but I can't hear you, Ian, at all. I can hear them clearly, but I can't hear you at all, Ian.
Yeah, and Derek, Brian, neither of you can hear me?
No, it's what Ian's experiencing. I think we're experiencing too. A lot of distortion. It's cutting in and cutting out, almost like it's trying to catch up. And it's like you're maybe talking to us through either internet connection or Wi-Fi, and that's what it sounds like.
Right.
So, and I know you're talking. It just it distorts the words so much that it just disconnects the words, and we can't really put them together. I was trying to though.
Yeah, I was squinting my eyes trying to figure it out.
Okay. So, okay. Anyway, if you can hear this, I want to talk about defunding police as a solution.
Yeah, okay. So I think I made that defunding the police as a solution. Okay,
yes. Comment on that, please. Let's talk about that.
I'll address, or I don't know, Brian, do you want to go first? I was going to talk about that too.
No, go ahead, man. I'm good.
Okay, so that's a really sensitive issue, and like I have a cousin who just retired from the Minneapolis Police Force, but what I would say is that I think what a lot of people mean is that, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but to put some of the police work into social service, into drug rehabilitation, into rebuilding communities, but also knowing that things like qualified immunity doesn't work today. That if police officers are not accountable in society, then we have a real problem. If police unions protect police for all actions, then we have a problem. And if you just look at like African American leaders, like NBA players, like Doc Rivers, who's the coach of the Clippers, his dad was a police officer, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, his dad was a police officer. And, people who've known police for years and years and years, but know that there's a systemic problem. I mean, the FBI just came out with statistics saying that you have white supremacists in some police forces, not all, infiltrating police forces. And obviously, if 90%, at least 95% of the time, police aren't accountable for these shootings that have occurred, you can look at the statistics, there's a real problem in the community. And I think, and I don't, and again, I don't want to speak for African American experience as a white person, but even our superintendent of the school district came out saying that he's scared for his son, going to get the mail, or just worried when this came out in the National Basketball Association, the NBA, that people just worried a police car driving by. That shouldn't happen in our society.
Yeah.
So I'll let Brian and Brandon speak about that.
Yeah. Go for it, Brian. Why don't you take that from there?
Yeah, I can, just kind of, just chime in a little bit. It is a real sensitive topic, and just, my personal perspective on it, because, my personal experience, as a black man, I have anxiety in all kinds of spaces. It doesn't have to be just a police officer that comes around me. I have anxiety when I walk into the mall thinking I'm being accused of something. I have anxiety walking into my own condo building at night, just want to make sure I get in. So there's all kinds of anxiety. My first experience with a police officer was when I was 9 years old, actually. And it was with being stuck in a drug raid, actually. And having an assault, with having a gun put to my head and being, walked out of the house.
Wow.
So that kind of experience is traumatic. So I've had that experiences. And yes, even to this day, when I see police officers or even when someone knocks on my door too hard, you get what I'm saying? I'm thinking it's the police. It's somebody coming to get me. Even Brandon can attest, even in the black community, somebody knocking your door too hard. They said, why are you knocking like the police? Exactly. Exactly. So it's just that anxiety is natural. But at the same time, even though that's a traumatic experience, I don't carry and overgeneralize and saying every single police officer is that way. I have, friends of mine from high school, and I even have former students that are police officers right now. So even, saying defund the police and so forth, I don't know if I can necessarily honestly say I completely support something like that. But just like other institutions and structures that have racism within it, there comes a lot of reform that's required. Within that, it comes a lot of training and a lot of just redoing of that particular system, which is law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And Derek, why don't you chime in here and give us your angle? What's your view on that?
Yeah, man. You know what? Just listen to the bros. It gave me a different kind of perspective when it comes down to what the core issue may be. I think it's a dichotomy of purpose. I think the defunding of the police, it's a means to an end. It's a squeeze. It's the financial squeeze, the burden to make the police do a certain job. Because nothing squeezes a person to do something like messing with the money. You start messing with money and finances, then their eyes are now open. They're more willing to understand and can be more complicit, and they're willing to work with you. You start messing with the finances. So I think that the defunding of the police has the intention to kind of just put that squeeze on this organization to do the work, because I realize, there's this, my heart goes out to the police officers, because I did one day as a budding AP on campus, and what I saw just in that one day, one of my students in class, my star students in class, I ended up racing and trying to get him from jumping over the fence because he had drugs on campus. And what that did for me is that allowed me to peek behind the veil of what the police officers and the APs may deal with on a daily basis. Whereas I see the best in students, they have to kind of look at and monitor the worst in students. So that perspective, right, that perception of what life is, we're on the same campus, but we're approaching it from two different places. I think our police unit, our police organizations, they have to look at life from a different lens than when I go to the store, it's different. When they're looking at the same store, they're looking at body language, they're looking at certain things, and I get that, right? I get that. But then you have some people who have implicit biases, and they're on the same police force as the ones who are trying to do the job the right way. Like, I'm not going to assume you're a certain kind of thing, although that assumption may grant me the short edge that I have in order to get home safely and to bring someone to justice. I get that, but it's tough. The conversation is, the whole purpose is that there are some people in this organization that may not have the right heart to do this job. And we need to do this job. So what we're going to try to do is mess with your finance. We're going to get where your heart is. It could be where the money is, right? So we're going to do that. Hopefully that's where the idea is. I'm thinking that may be the case. And if that's the case, I hate to say, but so be it, because it needs to be done.
Yeah, not to support in any way, this argument of over surveillance or over policing. Because as members of society, there's an element of all of us needing to be vigilant, right, and make sure that, hey, if let's just simplify it and say, if there's litter thrown on the ground, hey, pick it up, throw it in the garbage can. Something as simple as that. Not that that's a police.
I don't mean to cut you off, man. We can't hear you again. We have no idea what we just said.
Oh boy. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, and you're not hearing. Are you hearing me now?
How is that possible?
like, like you just cleared it up perfectly just now.
I just cleared. Am I still? Huh? Am I clear?
And now we back to this.
Jeez.
Oh man.
It's like you're talking into a back of a fan, man.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's right. That's the way to put it. Yeah. When you're saying something that's not essential, non-essential conversation and statements, we hear you perfectly. Everything else that's essential, it goes kaput.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. So, all right. So let's see. Can you hear this? No, you can't hear this. No.
Barely.
I make out hear this.
Recorded, yeah.
What I wanted to draw a parallel to, if you're catching snippets of this sentence, what I wanted to draw a parallel to is we don't seem to have we seem to have racial tolerance, if you will. Let's bring it down to an elementary level here. We seem to have racial tolerance in, for instance, the military. Why is it that we have this racial intolerance in the police department? And, can you hear this at all?
So what I think is racial intolerance in police departments.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
one of the things I want to bring up, and I don't know if Brian or Brandon are aware of this, but there was a guy by the name of Dave Grossman, and he wrote a book on killing, and he invented a term called, I think it's a really heinous term, called killology, right? How soldiers are trained to kill. Okay, the reason why I bring him up is that he was going around to police departments and basically training police officers to be killers. Okay? And one of the young African American men that was recently shot, Castillo, I think his name is, one of these trainings. Okay, the police officer had this training and shot this young man in his car with his girlfriend. And so that's the kind of training that these officers were getting, instead of training about, being community people, and I do agree with what Brandon said beforehand, is that, and also Brian, that this is a really sensitive topic. I'm not against police at all, or police officers.
Yeah,
they do, and that's a great job. Right,
Yeah.
no, not at all. But what I'm saying is that there's been unfortunate trainings and
right.
That aren't very sensitive to community involvement. And this idea of community involvement and racial profiling, these ideas have been around for a long time. And how do we make police departments more responsible? But I just wanted to bring up this particular person because if you look him up, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, he's making money on these speaking circuits to different police departments on how to be a better killer, and how soldiers get trained to kill, and so on and so forth. And I bring that up as an example of the wrong direction some police departments have taken in the past.
Yeah.
And where the conversation might want to go.
Well, let's look at the BLM movement, because it's become a national phenomenon, and it's it's something that's that the professional athletic leagues have adapted. Are these BLM movements? And I'm saying movements because I would assume the overall BLM movement is a good one, but it seems that in some of these communities they're turning into acts of physical violence. What are your thoughts on the BL movement and how they're approaching trying to bring, again, to use that phrase, social tolerance to America?
I didn't catch any of that. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. So,
Ian, I know what you said. I mean, maybe you can text me what you're saying, or
Yeah.
maybe try so that I can.
let's see.
We can like have a conversation. I can't hear what you're saying, and I don't think Brian or Brandon can either. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to text you if you can hear this, JP. I'm going to text you and see if this goes through. Okay. Let's see if this goes through. And I'm not sure what's going on here with the. Let's see if you get that, JP. Okay. I'll keep saying it because maybe you'll catch what I'm talking about. But the BLM movement, the pros and the cons. I want to address the pros and the cons.
What just happened?
Okay.
Man, Jesus
Right.
just
Okay.
came
I
over.
got that.
Go
Go ahead.
Don't move.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, wherever you standing, don't move.
Yeah, don't move.
Okay. Did you get that?
Yeah.
You get that?
Cons of black BLM. Yep.
Okay. And I want to address the pros and the cons because some of these protests are turning violent. Nobody wants violence, right? So so what are some of the pros and the cons to how the BLM movement is going about addressing and not only addressing, because they're obviously addressing it, but going about making and bringing change to the American landscape?
It's on you, Brian.
Derek, go for it. Oh, anyway.
Okay.
I don't care.
Cool.
You got it, bro.
Let me jump in now, right, real quick. So it's a lot of intersections, right? This Black Lives Matter movement. Its origin has an intersection. The initial activity of BLM has an intersection, and then what it's kind of turned into be. I want to believe that for all intents and purposes, that BLM with how it is now, as opposed to its origin and what it was expected to do in the primary stages. I don't want to think that they knew it would be like this. I think they wanted it to be maybe one. I wouldn't say one right, but one meeting at one peaceful protest, and then possibly change at some level change. But I believe there are some emotions that are not being addressed. I heard one commentator put it this way, and I'll leave this to the table. I can say this right here. I'm not out throwing rocks or cans of beans in anybody's window. I can't say that I'm doing that, right? I can't say that I'm doing that.
Right.
On one hand, I'm not doing that. And on the other hand, I've heard a commentator put it this way. The buildings don't belong to the inner city community anyway. If they are harming these buildings and becoming more violent, you know what I mean? It's because there is an emotion that is not being addressed.
Well said.
There's a fear, there's a hurt that obviously someone's not paying attention to. And what happens when you back a cat up into a corner? Whether you have good intentions or not, it's going to launch at your eyes, right? and it's going to go at you, right?
Yeah.
At some point in time. And I think that's what's happening to the BLM community. Like, what are we going to do? Like, if you're not addressing what we need, what would you like us to do? Because I've heard commentators say, man, we're tired of being patient. And I think that's a sentiment that really resonates true with BLM. I think worse times, Ian, are ahead. Worse times can possibly be ahead. This just may be a precursor of what's to come. If emotions and if feelings are not being treated, if we're not addressing, if the world is not going to address BLM and what they're asking to be addressed, I think there are worse things to happen. And I don't think that BLM is the worst people to be looking at. I don't think I think it's another group.
Interesting.
Another group that's not on the news. Another group that's not on YouTube. Those guys. That's the real group, because you have the front runners who you talk to, who you see on the news, and then you have the ones who are the real movers and shakers, and you don't know those guys until it's way too late. And I don't want that to happen, but I think we may be on the cusp of it.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
go ahead and piggyback off of that.
Yeah. I mean, just to chime in, and I obviously Brian, but I mean, look what happened in Charlottesville. That was for me, what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, back in 2016, was a real scary wake-up call. My worry, just to piggyback on what Brandon was saying, is that this election is so divisive.
Yeah.
My worry is that you're going to have some violence either way. Whoever becomes president, whoever becomes president in this election, there's going to be some violent repercussions. My fear is that there's going to be some violent repercussions. Whoever becomes elected, and obviously the federal government is looking at these white supremacist groups that are really violent, militias, right, in Michigan and other places, Idaho, wherever, and I think those fears are well founded. I think, obviously, as Ian just said, that none of us here support violence, but understand the emotion of not being heard. That's exactly true what Brandon was saying. Go ahead, Brian.
No, my two brothers here just articulated it perfectly, man. We're talking about, just emotions that are just kind of boiling over. And it's just like Brandon said, and we're probably haven't even seen the ugly side of this. I've even known people to kind of even describe what we're talking about as riots, but more so as rebellions. When you start putting a new name to it, a new title of it, it kind of encapsulates what's the actual emotion and what's the reality of what we're seeing. And when people describe it as a rebellion, you're talking about people who are just tired. Like, we've tried every strategy, every methodology to try to get our point and express our point, and it's not being received and being being accepted or even espoused. And you're talking about, because the thing is that we're looking at protesters as if they're the violent perpetrators, but without looking at what was the spark that created this.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking about what's the spark that created this in the first place. And it kind of even reminds me of when football players first started going into their protests, of the national anthem and so forth. And we were so focused on these guys not standing up for the national anthem, but we forgot why they were doing it. So we got to kind of look at that. Why are these protesters out here in the first place? What am I protesting? Why am I burning down anything? Because you know what? We're talking about property. We're talking about tangible assets and things that can be replaced. But these people are out here fighting for their very humanity to be validated, but we're talking about lives that are being lost on a regular basis without retribution.
Right.
Yeah. Can you hear this?
Yeah, better.
Well, I want Derek to address, and you addressed JP. You said, "Hey, this is a supremacy group," but on the other side, you've got a black supremacy groups as well that are, I know, going into Georgia and the Stone Mountain and trying to get the Confederate rock creations off the mountain. Do you feel enough is being done top down? Now, emotions are an important thing. So if a professional athlete's taking a knee, and the majority of them seem to be doing it now, either as a team or not, and then staying in the locker room, there's something systematically being done in the country where these people feel that they are not supported. And so what does, right, and so then you're getting at, this is an election, it's an election year, and this is a decisive election. Can we look at both parties here? Can we look at both parties and say, both parties are not doing enough to unify the country? Can we do that? Can we say that the parties are simply creating divide? Can we assume that? Can we make that assessment?
Well, I think, from my perspective, up until now, I mean, okay, before this, we had a African American president, Barack Obama.
Right.
But obviously, my personal thing, and being a peace scholar who's worked in peace studies for many
Yeah.
years and taught peace building and conflict resolution, worked with terrorists and work with bad terrorists and try to get them to a peace table. For what I think that, and my worry is that if this administration gets reelected, that kind of dialogue won't happen. But let's just theorize, if Biden gets elected, I think there needs to be a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, just like we had in South Africa, in Guatemala, and that
Interesting.
needing to be a cabinet position where you have an appointed person deal with truth and reconciliation of racism in this country. And I really mean that on every level, whether it's African Americans or Native Americans or Hispanic Americans or whoever, that needs to be addressed on that kind of level and that kind of seriousness. Like, we had a war on drugs, but, what about addressing racism in a very serious way like that, in a kind of Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a peace building level like that?
So, gentlemen, Brian and Derek, what are some of the examples and feedback that you can bring for listeners from the students that you work with? How are the students dealing with it?
Well, Brian is somewhat like an extended boss of mine, so he tells me what to do. So I'm gonna go ahead.
That's yes, man.
Right.
So Brian sends words, and I do the footwork, and so noticing what the students, what their heart is, they reflect honestly what James Baldwin says. James said, "How much time do you want for your progress?" Like, that's what Baldwin said. How much more time do you want for your progress before I start kicking your door up? Tupac said, "At some point in time, when I see that you're eating and I'm hungry, and I ask you for food and you give me the cold shoulder, how much time before I take my pistol, knock your door down and take that bread? Like, how much time do you want for me to? Because I don't want to have to do this, but I keep asking you.
Yeah.
I keep asking you, and you keep giving me the cold shoulder. So at what point in time do you want me to continue to ask you, right? Because the thing is, a lot of times what we're seeing people reprimand BLM, reprimand these players for their behavior, but you're not really addressing the reason why they are exemplifying this behavior. Like, let's talk to the culprit. What's the culprit of it, right? We're so surface level, with things, and it doesn't really even matter. Going back to your point, talking about the election, it's the worst or the less of two evils.
That's right. That's right.
Because it doesn't really matter who's who, because we got to get down to the real nitty gritty of the issue. And honestly, this is all, I think it's all based out of greed. It's all greed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Derek.
Who wants to have a leg up? Who wants to? And if we were to punch greed and power in the heart, get to that, hit that where it needs to be hit, right?
Amen.
Deal with that, and then everything else, I believe, when the dust settles, we'll see a world where we can appreciate others as human beings, and there's no leg up, there's no greed there's no ill-gotten gain to be achieved. So get rid of that foolishness. But anyways, to answer your point, to answer your question, the students, their sentiments are reflective of James Baldwin. And I just think that's funny, and I think it's powerful and scary, because if students at this level are asking the question, well, how much more time they need? Like, okay, so you keep treating me this way now. You want me to continue to ask you? Now, if you want me to continue to ask you, I'll ask you a couple more times, but I promise you at some point in time, I'm going to stop asking you, and I'm going to come take it from you, because obviously I have to eat too. Now, what you're saying to me is, now I'm asking you for food, and you're eating in front of me, and you see I don't have food, so you're telling me that you don't really care. Let me help you. I'm going to make myself care to you. I'm going to take your food. And then now it's going to be something different, right? But now you don't approach me and say, I'm stealing from you. Like, don't do that, because that's not where the narrative starts. There's more to the story. I took from you because I've been asking you for the last 5 years, pleading with you while you saw me not eating, and you saw my little brother, and you saw my little sister, you saw my mom, you saw my dad not eating, and now when I launch out because this is all I have, I'm coming to you because I see you have it. Don't treat me like I'm the thief here, because really and truly, you stole time from me when you saw yourself eating, and I wasn't eating. You took from me too. Now, what was in you that says I'm going to eat? I'm going to be about my four. I'm going to concern myself with my four and no more. Where did that come from? Right? We got to talk about that. Don't reprimand me for taking your food. Let's talk about the reason why you didn't think I was good enough to share that bread.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot that's going on. But I think, at some point in time, it has to get to a point where we ask, how much more time do you need? So that's really the sentiments of the youth, and they're coming to classroom with that. They're coming to the classroom asking those questions. Well, now wait a minute. Now they don't like it. And Ian, we're not talking about black kids. Ian, we're not talking about black kids. Black kids. Okay, they got that. We're talking about white kids saying, wait a minute, No, I don't know if I like that, because my best friend.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
My best friend, that could have been my best friend. So we're talking about Hispanic kids. We're talking about kids who don't look like me. Right. And they're saying, I don't know if I like that. And they're bringing that home to mom and dad, and they're challenging mom and dad.
Right.
They're challenging them. Right. So things are happening on the home front here that if we don't address it, that thing is gonna seethe over quick.
Yeah, one of the things I like to address here is you got at it right there. Hey, go to the root of the problem. What's the problem? So one thing I like to throw out there, just as consideration for listeners, is we have typically the root of the problem is the money. You defund the police department. You take money away from the police department. You squeeze them, and then they're going to shape up. The same thing goes for the U.S. government, right? And every organization or every institution inside the country has good things and bad things, we hope. Does the way the government deals itself economically and fiscally, is that best representing the people, or are there hidden strings? For instance, many people like Ron Paul, for instance, he'll say, "Hey, the Federal Reserve is not a just system." And it doesn't best represent the people, or per Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It's a private bank. It shouldn't be private. It should be public. It should be audited. So then you've got people on the other side saying, "Hey, wait a second. You've got the BLM movement being funded by people like George Soros. I think it's called Open Nation or Open Society, one of the foundations that he owns." And it does exactly that. I don't know if it contributes right to the BLM movement, but it does contribute financially for racial equality. Again, violence is never a productive means for anyone that wants to live peacefully, right? And I think we all certainly we all enjoy living in. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. We've got a secure country in the sense that it's got a massive military. Unfortunately, its leaders take that military and they do things around the world that best interest the corporations that sponsor and fund it in that sense. And it doesn't, again, perhaps not representing us on the homeland and what our best interests are for us and our family and our streets and our schools and our communities. But is there an underlying issue that perhaps needs to be looked at further, as far as, hey, why do we have such a divide in the politics in this country? What are this super PAC and the corporations? Are they wasting their time? Should there be more emphasis spent on unifying? And who's going to be diplomatic enough, right? Biden, Trump. Who's going to be diplomatic enough to say, we need to come together, folks? You know what I mean? And let's think logically about how we can retrain police departments, how we can train and teach our young children what it means to be feeding people of other languages, of other colors, of other religions, right? So those are just kind of my thoughts on a preliminary level. Is what can we be doing? And the two of you, Brian and Derek, are excellent examples of that. What can we be doing as individuals to unite and bring the country together? Because as I look at it, and JP, you would have you would have, being internationally more familiar in an international realm than I, the United States, is from what I can see, is still an amazingly wonderful country that has brought people like Martin Luther King to the forefront of bringing change and equality, and it sets a tone for other countries, right, where you can't necessarily do that, like China or Russia. You don't have that type of playing field that you're able to play. So we still have that opportunity, as far as I see, in this country, to make things right, to teach and be an example for other people around the country to get along, right? I mean, Rodney King, right? Was that in the 90s? Can't we all just get along? So as I look at the BLM movement and say, hey, there's such great qualities in it, the one issue I personally have with it is that they're allowing themselves, meaning the people that are congregating and protesting, they're allowing themselves to let terms become violent. And so then they're breaking into innocent stores and homes and whatnot. Some of this stuff should be avoided. What can we do as a community to make sure that productive protesting, peaceful protesting continue? So it's a very complex question, and I think the two of you are doing wonderful things on your own right, in your own power, to again instill this from an early age. What are some comments on that? And then let's go ahead and wrap things up, if you got that, because I don't know if you heard any of that or not.
I'm going to say something real quick, Ian.
Yeah.
And let me kind of preface it first of all. Throughout history, man, black people, we got too many receipts in history, right? that shows a lot of insidious things that happen. So sometimes when you say certain things, people throw a conspiracy theory or conspiracies in it, and it completely discredits your statement, right? So when we're talking about looters and we're talking about people going into innocent stores or even doing things, there's a lot of evidence that throughout history of different movements that blacks have done or organized, where they have been infiltrated.
Ooh.
Where things have happened, you have outside forces that have been infiltrating things to make it appear as if these people are vile, or they're just they're a nuisance, or they're a criminal,
right? And
it completely destroys the movement. We got the 1960s with the Black Panther movement, and a lot of what we call radicalism or militant organizations in the late 60s. That were doing a lot of great things in the African American community, where they were completely, like, we have this whole skewed perspective of them because of the FBI and COINTELPRO infiltration of those organizations that completely destroyed communities, which are still in this, in a despondent state today. You look at South Central Los Angeles,
right?
At one point, you looked at Watts in the late 60s when the Black Panthers and the other organizations came into town,
right,
and started to develop in those particular areas.
Yeah.
That where you saw community improvement, then eventually you see infiltration happen. The organizations end up fighting each other, and then it completely collapses. So, not to promote any, I'm not an advocate of and a proponent of conspiracy theories. I'm not like this the Illuminati kind of thing all the time, but when you look at like these people that we're labeled criminals and so forth, and yet the Black Lives Matter movement gets this negative skewed perception, we wonder if it's infiltration that's taking place.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Derek, you want to talk? You want to pick up on that? That's very, very interesting point there that you're bringing, Brian. What are your thoughts there, Derek? And then JP, let's get to you on that.
I think my big bro, I think he may have something that we should probably look into. Frederick Douglass said, and this is on a different playing field, but Frederick Douglass said it himself. Without struggle, there is no progress. Period. I mean, and so let's constitute what struggle may look like, right? Let's because we have to define what that struggle is. That struggle may be violence. It may be that. And I hate to say that. I don't want to constitute it, just label it as that, but it may be. But there's a struggle, there's a certain level of negativity or negative experience that John Lewis said is good trouble. right? We're going to get in some good trouble. You know what I mean? And it may be a good struggle that we may have to, that was going to bring us to this head where we can see each other in a round table, right? In a round table where we're all equal and we're all adding value to the livelihood of everyone.
That's right.
And I think that's so important. That's the goal. Listen, Ian, that's the goal, brother. That's the goal. Listen,
that's right.
That's the goal.
That's right.
Lose sight of that. Okay, Ian, you're different than I am. You have a different shared narrative and a different lived experience, and that's okay. Cool. But at no point in time in this conversation, I just met you, but at no point in time in this conversation do I have any ill intent or ill will towards you.
Right.
I want you and your family to eat just like I want mine to eat.
Right.
And that's listen, at 8:00 tonight, I need you to go home, have you some dinner, have your drink,
that's right.
Go to bed, wake up. That's all I want.
That's right.
I think that's what the world should be focusing on and kind of just moving
Correct.
towards. But the question is, why is it something so simple? Why does it feel so unattainable? And it's because there's some implicit things there's a lot of sin. There's a lot of things behind the doors. And I think that even if I have to consider this, I think it's almost like a tantrum. You know, I think white America may be in this tantrum kind of state to where you don't want to address it because you're mad. Don't be upset, but you got to address this. Like, sit down, Billy. We're going to address this. We're going to talk about this. Sit down. We're going to address this. You don't want to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it because it's important. You don't want to do that, but you have to be sat down. Let's talk about this because once we get past this hill, this small hill, I promise you it's a small hill. I promise you it's something small. I promise it's something small. Once we get past that, you will see that the grass is greener on the other side, and it's a lot more room on that side for all of us.
JP, Brian's brought up a good point here, and I'll say how I'll verbalize it how I'm interpreting it. Is there a possibility the BLM movement has been infiltrated by ill intent, people with an ill intent? Is that a possibility in your view, JP?
Well, look, of course, but I mean, here's the thing: like, all Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King, the FBI had files on them, and as Brian very well articulated it, with the Black Panther movement infiltrated and really destroyed, as he said, those movements within. And, but I don't really want to get into the federal issue as much as that I want to kind of like, I wrote an article for Counterpunch a couple weeks ago, June, why race is everything in America. And I just wanted to go over a couple quotes.
Good.
And one of the things that Brandon brought up was the history of capitalism. And one of the historians that I really like, his name is H.W. Brandt. And he talks about, you can't think of the United States as just democracy or history of democracy without thinking of it, the history of capitalism. When Adam Smith wrote Wealth of Nations, that came out in 1776. So that's a whole other discussion. But anyway, there was a recent article in the Atlantic in June that came out, and the guy that wrote, his name is Wesley Lowry, and he wrote, summing up the Black Lives Matter movement. He said in the article, and I quote, "Racism is not to blame. The thinking popular among at least some conservatives goes, it's the people fighting racism who are the problem. Everyone could just stop talking about all this stuff. We could go back to being a peaceful, united country. No one seems to be able to answer when, precisely in our history, that previous movement of peace, justice, and racial harmony occurred." Okay, so there is like a strain in American politics and maybe in American conservatism or in the Republican movement that they're blaming the people who are peacefully protesting against these issues of racism rather than addressing the real issues. And I think that both Brian and Brandon brought that up. And then the other quote I would just say is that nobody really, it's Dr. Martin Luther King's full quote in 1966 when he says that we have got to see that a riot is a language of the unheard, and what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. The mood of the Negro community now is one of urgency, that we aren't going to wait, that we have got to have our freedom. We have waited too long. I hope that we can avoid riots because riots are self-defeating and socially destructive. And unfortunately, as both Brandon and Brian brought up before, why are we still dealing with this today?
Right. Right.
70, 60 years on from today. 70, 60 years on from today.
Yeah. Is that Brian saying something? No. Okay. So.
Oh no, I'm muted, man.
Yeah, you're mute. Okay. I mean, and I'm looking at some Malcolm X quotes recently, the past couple weeks, and what a phenomenal man in so many ways he was. And I know many times he's pinned in an off light, in a negative light. But what an incredibly intelligent man! And I've been looking for some quote to thread in here to the discussion. I can't find one, but he had some really fascinating things to be saying about the African American community. And it's a hot spot. It's a hot topic for America because of the history between African American community and the white community, the white settlers and founders that started this country. But again, it all ties in, like both of you have brought up, Brian and JP. It all ties into colonialism and the capitalistic formulas that have been brought into our daily lives and what we've inherited as a country we know. Let's get some closing comments and closing thoughts on this. What is the best foot forward, regardless of who takes the White House? Of course, let's make sure that everybody's being fed. You know what I mean? I mean, let's do our parts. But what is the best foot forward? And let's make it a two-part answer here. What's the best foot forward if we have Biden and Harris running D.C., and what's the best foot forward if we remain with Trump and Pence? Let's make it a two-part answer. We'll start with you, Brian.
Oh, that's a tough one right there. Oh, Jesus, man. Yeah, and it's either way, it's a scary scenario, to be honest with you. Like one of the things that Brandon says, like we just might choosing the lesser of two evils. In these situations, and we're still looking at the same structures and the same systems of white supremacy, regardless of who's who's sitting on the throne. We're still looking at greed. We're still looking at the same issues, regardless. We had Barack Obama, our first black president, and Trayvon Martin, and countless other African American youth and men and women were killed during that time period with little or no retribution. We still had the same systems, still sucked educational systems and inadequate housing, the same issues and same things we've been crying for since the March of Washington. I think the best foot forward in either scenario, to be honest with you, is just that we need to have some real true dialogue with each other, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, regardless of your ethnicity, race, and culture. Is that we need to find out ways, because I think that, the biggest thing right now is not really where we are on the political spectrum. It's just our divisiveness right now. If you don't see things the way I see them, if you don't, have my own philosophies and beliefs, I'm not trying to hear what you're saying. And Brandon said something that was powerful, that, you're between you and him, that you all have different experiences, you have different perspectives in life, but at the same time, at the end of the day, you want the same thing. And we're just refusing to see that right now. And just like we can't have any kind of dialogue or conversation without, if we dissent with each other, we have to hate each other. And we're just capitalizing that. And I don't know if it's the powers that be and Trump Pence party that are capitalizing on this divisiveness and what's hate each other and so forth or what. But as far as right now, in the current climate, it just seems like we can't get past our differences right now.
Right. Well said.
Either way, just engage in some real open, honest dialogue and being able to dissent peacefully.
Yeah, and I'm going to insert, before you answer, Brian, I'm going to insert this, and you can run with this as well. And again, this is a two-part answer. If you choose to accept that challenge, what's the best foot forward with a Biden-Harris presidency versus what's the best foot forward with a Trump-Pence continued presidency? But inserting in that many of the community representatives, from what I'm seeing of the BLM movement, are calling for a complete redo of the country. And the reason I'm mentioning that, Brian, is because, and I'm speaking now because I'm not going in and out so you can hear me, but the reason I'm mentioning that, Brian, is because you talked about, hey, regardless of whoever gets in there or continues, we got the same corrupt system, right? We've got the same thing. So then that sparked me to say, hey, what about these people that are calling for a complete redo of the whole system? How do you rebuild the country if that's even an option? Anyway, so if you choose to answer that, you can go with that, but that's just another angle to run with in your answer. And Brian, if you'd like to answer that question, you can continue. But we go with Derek.
Okay, well, you know,
What?
I mean, well, when you look at starting over,
Oh, yeah, right.
I think, when you look at starting over, as you mentioned, how Black Lives Matter, they're calling for a complete overhaul of this United States that we're in. I think, we need to possibly sit down and redefine what that means. Can we go back to day one? I would have to argue, no, we can't do that. And I don't know how we could do that. Well, when we overlap the time in between the time that we're realizing we got to start over, and then we realize, okay, we got something good now. That in between time will probably be chaos and just craziness, right? So we don't have that kind of ability to start over from ground zero. But I think the idea is we have to start from a different place. We have to start from empathy. So let's start over from where we are, but let's start this time from the perspective of empathy, empathizing for someone else, and then we're going to build a new world based on that framework, not the framework of greed and my for it no more, but from the framework of, I want to make sure you're eating, I want to make sure I'm eating. How do we create a system that makes that happen?
Sure.
And if it doesn't line up to that realization, then let's throw it out and just kind of rebuild that. Let's take a look at it. But the end of the day, it needs to be, we need to coexist together as a family. We need to do that. And I just, I don't think we can start over from ground zero, but I think we need to start from where we are, but from a different lens.
Right. Well said. And then what's your best foot forward with the continuance of Trump-Pence, and what's your best foot forward with Biden-Harris? What's your best foot forward?
Well, we have to move together. And I think I think that sentiment is just all I can say. We have to be able to move together when it comes down to
compromise.
When it comes down to Trump, these are great guys in their own right. I'm sure they are. I don't know. I don't live in their homes. I don't know what they really truly believe. I only know what the media tells me. However, when you take a look at what a person produces, right, you only know what they are based on what they produce. If your production says, if what you produce says something negative, I can only safely assume that's where your heart is, right? So if that be the case, I need you to change not just your production. I need to change where your heart is. So everybody needs a heart shift. Everybody needs a heart shift. I don't care if it's Pence or Biden or whomever. Everybody needs a heart shift when it comes down to leave this country, unless you're okay with this country continuing to be divisive as it is.
Well said, Derek. Brian, JP, go ahead.
By the way, I had some issues with my alarm, and so the guy came and you guys were on the phone, and it was difficult to kind of have the book interlaid, but if you don't mind, I'd like to piggyback on what both, Brian and Ed said, and I think, Ian, you said that you're looking for some Malcolm X quotes, and that another article I recently wrote on June 9th that I quoted them extensively, but I kind of obviously, from a white person's perspective, and I always have to be aware of my own privileged background and also aware of myself in society, and not having had the experiences of African Americans or even this discrimination. I mean, the only time I ever faced it was when I met Native Americans in Brazilian Amazon. They were afraid, I was white. And then the other time was being in England, being English sometimes look down on you as a white. Even
Oh,
as an
sure.
American, but
An American, yeah.
But anyway, I just, there's no way I could have the experience that either Brandon or Brian have had, the sense of with the police or the story that Brian had. But but just looking at like this idea of U.S. patriotism and American patriotism. Malcolm X said, "You're not supposed to be so blind with patriotism you can't face reality. Wrong is wrong, no matter who does it or says it." Right?
Right.
And Malcolm X also said something really interesting. We talked about this idea of economics as well, because obviously we have a president who's a billionaire, and nobody, in my lifetime, will never be a billionaire, but I don't even know. Anyway, that's another issue. But Malcolm X also said, I believe that there will ultimately be a clash between the oppressed and those who are doing the oppressing. I believe there will be a clash between those who want freedom, justice, and equality for everyone, and those who want to continue the system of exploitation. I believe there will be that kind of clash, but I don't think it will be based on the color of the skin. And again, both Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King were only 39 when they were killed. They were young guys. I mean, and as Brian brought up before, this younger generation is facing a lot. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about this pandemic and a lot of other issues, including having to deal with nuclear weapons, which we're dealing with race today. But there's so many issues that it's a lot, and I worry about my nieces and nephews. But anyway, I just in America today, what is America today? You brought up how do you deal with the Trumpers or the Trump and Pence and people who support those? Well, what I worry, and I think we've all said this, and I think Brandon and Brian said this: dialogue. That's the key to peace building. And I've been teaching peace studies for I've been involved in it since 2004, really. But dialogue, and we're so divisive as a society, and I fear that this election might cause more division, but until what's enough is what Brandon said. How much is enough, and where do we need to get to a point where we create some kind of serious dialogue?
So go to your city council meetings, write to your state legislature, et cetera, is what I suggest for listeners. But Brian, I want to give you a chance to answer, and JP, actually want you to start that, because JP, do you concur, if you will? Do you go with where Derek is saying you take the system that you have that's been handed down and you simply change it and make it better, or does it need to be completely rewritten? Do you totally try to make a new country? I mean, that's what some of these arguments are.
I don't. I mean, just to answer, you're asking me real quick about what he said, and then I'll let Brian go. But the history of the United States is what it is, but we need to. I mean, my goal is teaching young people is addressing their history and understanding the origins of racism, but at the same time, tearing down the whole system. I mean, what is that going to mean? We have to work with what we have.
Right.
But not through violent means, but through peace-building means. And it's as imperfect as it is. At least we have a constitution and a Bill of Rights. Most countries don't even have it. Not even England, really. I mean, it's
correct.
They model their systems after us.
That's right.
Which, in many ways, is ironic because of what our founding fathers had slaves. So, and I'll let Brian go. But there's a lot to rebuild here. There's a lot to do, but not tearing everything down is not, I don't think, the answer, at least from my perspective.
So let me insert this before you answer, Brian. It just flashed into my mind. You don't necessarily need to tear down and rebuild D.C., and that's symbolic of perhaps what we've all kind of talked about here. That doesn't need to happen in these police department jurisdictions either. Perhaps they just need instruction and dialogue. Okay, Brian. So let's end with you, Brian. Does the system need to be redesigned, or you tore down and redesigned, rebuilt, or do you simply take what you've got and make changes?
I'm going to say this, man. Regardless of everything that I say and everything, that I reference from history, this is an amazing country, man. To be honest with you, I travel a lot. I like to go to foreign countries a lot, but there is nothing like coming back home. Even though there's a lot of ugliness, and I have a different experiences than most white people, it's still an amazing country. So I would say definitely it's a redesign. Let's address the ugliness. Let's address the good, the bad, and the ugly within our country to just improve things. And what's to make things better, more equitable, more equal, a level playing field. And just let's work with what we have, and let's just make augmentations to it. And what's changing? Let's make it better. Let's make it where what we have in our Constitution, what we've stated in our Declaration of Independence, and all those great documents that we've created at the foundations of this country, and what's lived to that. Let's guarantee that. Let's actually honor and hold that up at some point.
Right.
Amen. God bless America. So, what a wonderful contribution we've seen, JP. I equally thank you for joining us, Brian. Thank you for joining the program, and Derek, thank you for joining. Is it Derek or Brandon? What do you prefer?
Yeah. So Brandon-Derrick's my full first name. So
Got it.
A lot of the family at the house, they call me Brandon professionally, and most of my guys. Brandon's fine, brother. You good to go, man.
All right, sounds good. So I look forward to, none of us here, that means all four of us, none of us think this is going away anywhere. This is not going away. This is going to be a continued topic of discussion. So we will recongregate at a later date. But I do want to give each of you a chance before I close out. I want to give each of you a chance to just give some final words and final thoughts for listeners. Derek, let's start with you. We'll go to JP, and then Brian, you can tie it up.
Gotcha. Let's take a look at the world as a human being. I have children. My daughters, they love me, and I love them more. And when my daughter Brene, Bailey, or Ketron, when they do something wrong or that's incorrect, I don't kill my kids. I don't kill them if they did something wrong, even though what they did hurt me. I don't kill my kids. What I do is I am that diplomatic father that will sit down and say, listen, this is what we want to do. This is what happened. Here's how we changed it, right? So they have to have this hierarchy of this being that's outside their situation, looking at their situation, saying, hey, there's a better way to do it. And I think, I'm super duper, when it comes down to politics, I don't mind looking at things as black and white, but I think there's a hierarchy also here that we need to address, because that diplomatic father could be God the Father. And the thing is, as a Christian man, I believe in Christian values that there is a certain way we should treat each other, a certain way we should talk to each other, a certain way we should deal with each other. And based upon that principle, that's God saying, hey, listen, outside of where America is, here is how America should be. I see that America's done this right here. I'm not going to kill you all, but I think there's a better way to do it. So if we look to God and what he says that I am love. And if I love my brother like I love myself, how can I hurt him? So if we take a look at that perspective and use that as a way by which we can kind of engage each other, I don't want America to just die, just go to hell. I don't want all that to happen. No, I just think that we need something to as a barometer, say that, hey, this is what we should do. This is how we should do it. Let's do this from here on out. Because at no point in time did Jesus Christ say, listen, young lady, I know you're a prostitute, and I know they want to kill you, but the thing is, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And everybody had to drop those stones because everyone has a history. So I can't kill you because you did something wrong one time. I can't judge you by the situation you're in. I have to judge you based upon where I think you can go. So I'm going to pick you up with love, with grace. I have space for grace for you. I'm going to pick you up from that, and let's move together. And that's exactly what he did. I think that needs to be their approach of the Americas today.
Applaud for you, Derek. Applaud. JP, go for it.
Okay. And again, Ian, thank you so much for inviting me back and being a regular guest. And one thing I want to say is that I truly appreciate Brandon and Brian joining as well today. It's been great. So,
you got it, man.
I guess
thank you.
I want to say too is that Christian values are really important to people in the United States, love thy neighbor, love thy enemy. But I also want to bring up the Buddhist tradition and also Hindu and Jainism, which is what Mahatma Gandhi based his nonviolent movement on, and what Dr. Martin Luther King modeled his ideas on it. And it goes back to this ancient word called ahimsa. It's a really ancient word going way back in Jainism, way back in Hinduism, going back to at least maybe 5,000 years ago. And it means without violence. And if we can understand the other person and have empathy, because, if I get into neurology in the brain, we make these millisecond decisions in our brain. It can be just somebody wearing like a Yankees baseball cap, and I'm a Boston Red Sox fan. We make these instant connections in our brain, which goes to different fear centers and things like that, from even a biological level. But at the social level, we're so beyond like the animal kingdom as far as genocide and so forth. If we can learn to understand that we're all human beings here, and that actually love is the basis of the greatest aspect of human beings, and understanding and having empathy and actually learning how to have empathy and actually teach people empathy through education. There's now mindfulness classes, which are actually based on Buddhism, but teaching empathy and actually learning this lesson of love thy neighbor, love thy enemy. These are really important lessons for all of humanity. And I worry about the political dialogue and people lacking this empathy. Where do these problems originate from? And I guess that's what I would say about that. And again, thank you, Ian, for having me on.
Thank you, JP. Great points. Brian.
Hey, my two brothers there made so many great points, man. And it's funny, when you said, we're going to wrap this up, the first thing I thought about was the word empathy. And even and using empathy, because I know, it's funny that even Brandon, talked about his daughter and, being a parent. Every single day as a parent, I'm learning empathy. Every single day. Trust me, man, because my daughter does stuff that is like ridiculously just stupid sometimes. Yeah, and it's like, what is wrong with you? But the first thing I have to do as when I correct her behavior, I say, "Come here, baby. I don't want to fuss at you. I swear I don't want to be mad at you. But look what you're doing. Look what you're doing right now. Then this is what you should do. Then then when I walk away, I'm human inside, but I think about, my parents went through the same thing with me, right? So it's just empathy and compassion. But we've lost that. And when we talk about, dealing with things, regardless of what happens in this election, it's about empathy, compassion, being able to have dialogue with each other, being able to understand each other. And getting to the core of our problems, which is bigger than racism and greed, is sin, is evil, is wickedness, is greed. At the end of the day, and like Brandon said, why can't we all eat? You get what I'm saying? Why can't we all eat? But we have this attitude of this thing of self-interest. I'm not going to sit here and attack capitalism 100%, but it's just this self-interest thing. It's like, not only am I going to eat, but I need to eat more than you, and I need to eat before you. For example, I'm going to the mall right now. I had to jump in the car because I had to catch them all before they close to return something. And you even go to a rack and looking at a clothes rack, and our people are so indoctrinated to self-interest. It's like, we can't even look at the same rack together. You got to jump in front of me without saying, excuse me, and cut me off. And sometimes you just want to punch people in the back of the head for that, but you can't. You get what I'm saying? You can't do that. But we have this attitude. It's like, it's a big rack of shirts, and it's like, why can't we look at them together? You get what I'm saying? Or like, when you get finished, bro, I want to come get in that spot where you at, bro. But people will cut you off, and then they'll jump right in front of you, and then we can snatch it first. And it's like, we got more than one large here. We can both, do this. So we just need to kind of shift away from the attitude of just worrying about myself and develop more empathy, more sympathy, and just some kind of understanding, and stop minimizing other people's feelings and experiences, and just kind of embrace each other despite our differences. There's no way that at any point that we're all going to think the same. Matter of fact, I don't want to sit with a group of people who are just like me. At any point, I want to hear different perspectives. I want to be challenged my own perspectives. I want
Love
to
it.
reevaluate my opinions and perspectives. You know, sometimes I want to walk away like, you know, like and have things to think about that I can either reevaluate or just add to my repertoire. And I just think that's the direction that we need to go on, regardless of my political views, my perspective. I've sat down with people who have like views completely opposite of mine, and still find a common interest that, you know, we're both Americans and we want our country to be great. So
Amen.
that's about it.
And the three of you are wonderful, truly American heroes, and thank you for doing what you do. Brothers, and I'll use that term because you've mentioned it, Brian, a couple times. I look forward to our next discussion, and I thank you for joining Discussion to Truth. Folks, guys, keep doing the good work, and I'll be back in touch shortly with you.
Thank you, Ian, so much.
Thank you, Ian.
And you're the man, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, peace, man.
All right, so there we have great people, okay, human beings, family men, setting an example for others to follow, unbiased, bipartisan. And if you look at the procession of the discussion, sifting through these various aspects of current events, historical events, where did it all come down to? Where were the four of us? The four of us led each other down to a path that was neutral. We all agreed on one thing. That was love and appreciating that we're all Americans. Okay, so now primarily my guests come from typically the United States and the UK. I've had a few Canadians on as well, but typically it's an American themed, if you will, discussion. And so I'm coming from that perspective. I'm coming from that viewpoint as an American. And there are things to be learned from all countries. Inhabitants of countries change. Of course, what's the average lifespan of a human being? 70-something years? So all of us come and go from the planet. We are all simply here for just a very short period of time when compared to the lifespan of the planet. This is our opportunity, folks. This is our opportunity to be a beacon of light, of knowledge, of wisdom, of patience, of compassion, of love for those who come after us to follow. This is our opportunity to leave humankind a great example of what it means to productively contribute to society. And the most powerful country on the planet, this is your time, America. This is your time to embrace race, to embrace ethics and ethnical views, if you will, ethnicities, to embrace religions, to embrace peace and prosperity and kindness and consideration for all. This is not the time to divide, folks. This is not the time to divide. In a few short weeks, we'll all be dealing with an election, which means we will have to make the best of a continued administration, or we will have to make adjustments in the best of a new administration. So this is an opportunity for a democracy to shine, and each and every one of us and you represent key membership of that republic. Me personally, I don't think there's been a better country ever created than the United States. Constitutionally. Not from a banking standpoint. Because the literal corporation that runs the government, the federal corporation, is incredibly corrupt. For the reasons that Brian and JP and Brandon-Derrick all brought to the table. Because of greed. Men and women greedy. Greedy. Unwilling to share. Greed. Greed runs our society. We allow it. We can change it. But in regards to the Constitution, for which we all live and represent, there's not a more perfect document, in my opinion, that's ever been created. Yes, there's been amendments to it. Yes, it needs a Bill of Rights to accompany it. But we have those, folks. Now, this is the time to unite, not as Republicans or Democrats, but unite under constitutional values, inalienable rights, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The right that you have to earning a living and obtaining your own property and securing that property and helping others live a prosperous life as well. Division is not good. Is not good. And that is why I do what I do. I do my weekly show because what you receive on the mainstream, when you turn on Fox News, when you turn on CNN, when you turn on NBC, all you receive is divides because they make money off of dividing you. They don't make money off of peace. They don't make money off of unification. If they made money off of unification, we never would have gone into Iraq. We never would have been in Vietnam. We never would have been in Afghanistan. The banks that run and fund the media and the major media outlets make money off of dividing you. War, folks, makes money. I'm going to end with this. I've been fortunate to speak with some soldiers pretty high up in the U.S. military, special operations, if you will. And they said, Ian, everybody will speak a tough game. Everybody says they want conflict if they have to. Okay, fine. If you have to, you have to. But what he said is, coming from a person who's been in war, let me sidetrack and say, look, when the towers fell in 2000, was it 2001? When the towers fell, my first instinct was to join the Marines. And then I thought about it. And I said, I'm not going to. Because I really, in my soul, I do not believe in physical conflict. I don't believe in it. I think it is, and I've mentioned this on previous programs, I think it is a very weak means, ends to the means of a violent thought process. A thought process that is unable to continue processing to deliver a productive result. Instead, they take a weak result and they lash out in an act of violence. Violence is a very weak form of a mental process. Very weak. The world cannot figure that out. Can we, world? We cannot figure that out. Instead, we have to shoot guns, drop bombs, burn houses down. We cannot figure out that violence is weak. W-E-A-K. Weak. But it is, in my view, and I'll stand by that. And for that reason, I never joined the U.S. military. It doesn't mean I'm not a patriot to the American flag, because I am. And I would never kneel for that flag. Personally, I would never kneel for that flag, ever, or the anthem. I appreciate this country and what it's done for me too much. And what it's done for me is it's kept me safe, hasn't it? It's kept you safe. And if you put your line on it, if you put your life on it, in the form of being a police officer, firefighter, a military, whatever it may be, CIA, I thank you for that. But I chose not to join the military after 9/11, which was, again, I'll repeat, my first instinct. Dialogue is key here. Communication is key here. And frankly, if you are in any organization, whether it be supporting Trump, or whether it be supporting the BLM, or whether it be supporting whatever you may be doing, the Democratic movement, whatever you're doing, if you are listening to this, and you choose to act out violently to portray your opposition or position, but you choose to act out violently to purposefully hurt someone else that has that same freedom of speech, and if you damage other people's property to try to make a statement, consider the words of Brandon-Derrick. Those without sin cast your own stone. How dare you? So come together, folks. Come together, unite behind that Constitution. If that means leaving your political party, leave your political party. Unite under the Constitution. Unite under other people's inalienable rights. Because we can do this, folks. We can do this. And let's see, we will. This has been another discussion of truth. I thank J.P. Linstroth, Brian Knowles, and Brandon-Derrick for joining the program. I'll be back next week, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard. And by the way, coming up in October, this just in, by the way. Let's see, George Santos, running for a district, I think it is 4 in New York, will be joining us next month. Thank you for tuning in. Pass the word along, folks. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. Donate to the site at iantrottier.com. That's INTROTTIER. Until next week, folks, be awesome.